Good morning.
Okay. Okay, so I'm going to start with the first case study in the video that was titled Mr. Big is dead, long live Big. And this very first case study was very interesting for me because first of all, I didn't even know what that Sex in the City movie is, but that's a movie series was. But the case study sort of forced me to go and look at it. So this marketing insight or lessons is from. It started with an episode from Sex in the City, from the latest episode, I think episode 1, where one of the characters called Carrie, came home and then she found a new husband. They called the character Mr. Big, who was exercising on a peloton bike, and then when she came in, she saw him, just on the floor, clutching his heart, I mean, he was dead. And this really, really caused a stir on social because this is like a show that had been running for a very, very long time. It's just like what's the longest running TV show in Nigeria? Maybe like Tinsel, something like that, sure. So the show had been running for a very long time, and this episode was was really, really anticipated. People were really looking forward to it. And then the first episode, we have Mr. Biggs, who was exercising on a peloton bike, and then the next thing, he dies. So it was a whole lot of drama online. And the interesting part was that just like every other brand, who is looking for brand visibility, brand exposure, and all of that, Peloton themselves, like the makers of the bike, all these trainer bikes, they had no idea what the plot of the episode was. They didn't know Mr. Biggs was going to die. In fact, they didn't even pay any money. They just knew that, okay, their bike was going to be in that episode. So, visibility, no harm, no foul, right? But when they woke up and then, they found out that the guy on the bike died, so it was a really, really big thing. People started saying all sorts of things that maybe this bike, you know how people can be now. So that means this bike can cause maybe like a stroke or some sort of coronary disease. It was just a whole lot of ruckus, right? So people, everybody was talking about it. Everybody was, giving their views here and there. Some people even said, Peloton themselves should sue HBO, like seriously. And it was very interesting because everybody in this room, almost all of us, we're very, very particular about our brand. We're very protective about our brand. We don't want any brand stain. We always want to keep up this perfect image of our brand, and sometimes it's not always the case because brands are, yes, they are very tiny little things, but then sometimes we might need to sort of sacrifice something so that we can get the visibility, that we need. So it's not every time that your brand has to be in like the perfect light. Yes, of course, you have to make sure that your brand is the perfect light, but it's not all bad publicity that's bad publicity. Or I mean, like, what, I don't know, what do you guys think? Is there anything like good publicity, bad publicity? I don't know. Can we just quickly touch on that before I go forward? Is there anything like bad publicity for your brand or good publicity? Anyone? Okiki? Is Okiki on the call?
Today's hand is raised.
Oh, Ayotunde. Sorry, I didn't see that. Hi, Ayo. Good morning.
I show Kiki answer now. You see the colleague.
Was she the one that answered me that you were on the call?
All right, so it's hard to, okay, well, I think the simple answer I'll give is publicity, whether good or bad, right? I think it's when you begin to contextualize what the publicity is about is when you now narrate it or narrow it down to whether it's good or bad, right? But the mere fact that you're in the press or you're online, right, is publicity. And I mean, gives you, as they say, it gives you legs, right? For people to know or hear or see about you, or
Yeah.
people to start to research about you. Whether, I mean, what brought you in the line, brought you to the limelight was good or bad, right? But it just creates a sudden awareness and surge about your brand or your organization or whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. So like what the guy was saying in the video, I mean, there's nothing like we sometimes need to be flexible with the brand, and allow some things, or not like you allow something, but you find a way to be tactical about it and turn a situation around for the brand, in terms of, driving awareness and letting people know about the brand. So what did Peloton did, after the whole saga of the bike. So in like a couple of hours, they got someone, a cardiologist, to put out a statement. Well, not really a statement. It's not like the brand came out with her, but they got her. She's a world-renowned cardiologist. To just make light of the situation, talk about it's like, oh, I'm sure everybody's like surprised at what happened, and then she sort of twisted it in a way to say that it's not actually the bike that caused the guy's death. He probably had been drinking, and that bike even probably kept him longer to stay alive all these years for us to be able to, see him on screen and all of that. So that was the first thing they did. And another thing they also came up with is an ad, where they had the same guy who died in the TV series in the TV series, just very being very cheeky and all of that, and they made it such that he didn't die, he's alive, that kind of very, very witty thing. So that was something that was really brilliant and really, really short turnaround time, that people even thought maybe they had it, behind their sleeves. But then another thing also happened. So the main guy, the Mr. Biggs guy, that was in the TV series, I think he had some sort of allegation, sexual assault, whatever, whatever. So they quickly just, removed the ad. So those are one of the few things that they did immediately, everything was going on. So some of the things that,
All right, so we've got a break in transmission, I suppose, from Shion. What I should do now is to nominate somebody else to continue from where she left off, to see who watched the video. But because I'm drinking coffee and I'm in good spirits, I won't do that. All right, so she was at the point where she was talking about. So the first thing is the spokesperson that they got is a lady who is on the advisory board, who is their health consultant. And so she followed the story narrative, which is an important point. And if you watch the series like Uyi in the comment section, shout out. I don't know how you are so young and you've watched all 6 seasons of Sex and the City. Even that was shown during my time, I've not watched, I did not watch it, but at least I watched just like that. Right, and so the story narrative of the Mr. Big character was then brought into PR, which was really great. The other thing was they mentioned Ryan Reynolds' company, Maximum Effort, and they used, Peloton. If you know anything about Peloton, you know that it's virtual, so they always have an instructor. So the main Peloton instructor was the lady who was sat with Mr. Big in that ad as well. And if you watch the video, you kind of see what that is. So they addressed this quite tactically. And the turnaround time was extremely short. And I think that's the major point. What do you do, when you're in a situation like this? Is within 24 to 48 hours to be able to turn this around quite positively. And I suppose that those are that's the feedback from this. So I'd like to ask since she's not back, I'm going to take 2 minutes to ask a few questions. All right. So first is, does anybody not know Peloton? Yes, no, I know it, I don't know it. Hands up in the comment section. Or somebody's hand is up at the back in the office. Who is that? I can't hear. Benga, you don't know Peloton? No, you didn't check them out after you watched the video? That's problem number 1. All right, so who else doesn't know Peloton? Peloton is one of those, I suppose, tech meets hardware type companies. So instead of buying your bike before that, you go and buy your bike and be doing your bike by yourself. They've created, I suppose you buy it, but you don't really. You kind of there's a subscription aspect to it as well. So you get on your Peloton bike at a certain time, your instructor is on your screen, you kind of do with other people. So there's a social side to exercising and riding and stuff like that. And the cool kids, who live in San Francisco, and some people, I know I have a couple of friends who also have Peloton bikes. This is the new way of life for exercising, because you're not alone, but you're together with other people. So that's the Peloton bike. Right. I have another question. So he said brands are tougher than you think. He said we have an overstated value of brand image and symbolism. Discuss. Do you agree that brands are tougher than we think, and we have an overstated value of brand image and symbolism? Let me see. As the professor, I'm going to find somebody in the comment section. Mr. Olalekan Alim, you have the floor.
Good morning, everybody. So that question is very complicated. The way you said it, please, can you break it down? I don't understand that question.
Okay, don't worry, I'll free you. But what I want to give us your perspective on that point 10. You watch the video, I suppose, because you're a good student. I'll take that for granted. All right. So tell us, what did you take away from that?
From the Peloton brand. Yeah. Sorry. So what I got from it was more or less relating it to our own brand. When Mark Racing mentioned something about that brand visibility, right? That the whole thing about the Peloton bike, this guy died or not. Well, the most important thing is that visibility. And I was thinking more about Union Bank, right? Because earlier this year we had an idea where we wanted to do something like, how you do brand placements, like in movies, right? When the world destroys, there's always that Mercedes-Benz that never, nothing happens to Mercedes-Benz, or nothing happens to that special car, right? Or that special building, right? Just that subtle advertising. It's just brand visibility. It doesn't mean that, in real life it will happen, right? So I think that was kind of what I got. And for me, I think it's a very clever way of advertising. That was what came to my mind. I hope I answered your question. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm loving the comment section. I'm coming to Tony in a sec. So Motola, you mentioned that their stock price dropped, which is the point about markets being affected by publicity is a huge thing. It's why when Musk will sneeze now, all the Bitcoin and everything will just be going anyhow. Anyway, so this is the same thing we've seen, or that you mentioned. Motola, can you just shed some light on your perspective on Peloton? And then right after, once Motola is done, Tony, you have the floor. Thank you.
Okay, I found it really interesting. I think it was the one episode that made me, just go down a it was the one point that made me go down a rabbit hole, because then I now watched the interview with the lady, that's Dara. I think she's the marketing director, went down the rabbit hole on the ad agency as well. Very funny logo, M with as it was written with a child's hand. Yeah, so actually that was where I found out like it actually did affect their stock price, and then they reached out to these guys, and I think they did the entire commercial in just 48 hours, which I found really, really interesting. Again, I know questions came up like, was it because maybe Ryan Reynolds is connected and all of that? Could a regular agency have pulled off such, right? And I think that was something that just had me thinking, like, imagine if we had gotten that brief, could we have pulled it off in 48 hours? Yeah, so I think, I thought it was pretty interesting, but I felt like they didn't even catch a break. They were just reeling from that. Next thing, the allegations came up, like it was, we were like, it's like people are after these guys or something. But I think what I really did appreciate was how responsive they were. Like I think it was really amazing. I think, yeah. That for me was my takeout, to always be agile, to be responsive. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Masala. Tony, over to you. For the people that did not know Reebok existed for a long time, go for it.
Okay. Sharing screen. Sorry. Here we go. We're all seeing this, yes. Lovely. I apologize. After seeing Sean's slides, I'm sorry for what I'm about to show you. But yeah, quick question. Does anyone own an actual pair of Reeboks? Is that in the back? Is that in the back? Timine, that's very random. Okay, cool. That's the only person who I can see, by the way. Precious. I find this really surprising because I have not seen a pair of Reeboks in a while. But okay, cool. This has nothing to do with anything. Moving swiftly on. I'm hoping we all watched the video, but this is a 10-second summary of what we saw in the video, which was Adidas bought Reebok in 2006 for $4 million and then sold them in 2021 to AVG for 2.5, billion, not million, because that would be useless, dollars. And they sold them because Reebok was taking focus off their main brand and was also a drain on resources. And an important thing that Mark Ritson had pointed out was resources doesn't always equal money. I feel like the bottom line is still money, but it's important to note that it's not just a drain on money alone. Wow, I'm going through this fast. Sorry, I have like 6 slides. Okay, so I had looked into what resources meant, and they had said, well, in the video he had said management, just brain power of management and actual minutes in the day. I was like, okay, just get more managers and have them focus more on Reebok. But there's a longer article, which I can share later, actually, that kind of went into what it takes to actually manage a house of brands. And it's basically like having multiple wives. You cannot play favorites. So it's interesting, you have this house of brands. There's 4 or 5 brands in the same, I guess, parent company, and you have to treat each one equally. Of course, there'll be, the case where you're only assigning only 10% to one particular brand, or, you obviously they can't all have the same marketing budget, the same production budget, any of that stuff. But in general, you have to treat them equally. You have to give them all the same chance to actually grow, give them the same amount of resources, or I guess a proportionate amount of resources. And we could see in the case of Adidas that they wanted their brand to. That Adidas was the most important brand in that house of brands. And Reebok was just there. And then the second thing was that it was important to learn, or it is important to learn, that what works for one brand may not work for the other. So there's no template to running a house of brands. There's no, just because, people seem to like one thing going for another. One thing for one another doesn't mean they're going to like it with the other brand. Different brands have different target audiences. They have different needs, different requirements, all of that stuff. Then it's important to be comfortable with intra-company competition. So there can be beef in the house. You can't be upset. Nike can be upset that, actually, why they use Nike? I'm sorry. Look at that brand, top of mind stuff. But so Adidas can be upset that Reebok is doing better. Reebok can be upset. They have to be treated like 2 different brands that they want to grow well. So, if Reebok is doing better today, that's great. Adidas needs to step it up, and then Reebok then steps it up, and it's just fun competition, as opposed to we have a problem here where one person is not winning. And then it goes down to nitty gritty as well. It's like even HR, down to HR policies. It's like HR has to create stuff specific to each brand. Each brand has to have its own stuff. So whether it's headquarters or agencies or packaging, whatever. each brand has to be treated separately. And I found that interesting because it's really hard to do that. It's really hard to do that, especially when you're looking at the costs required, which is why I had mentioned earlier that resources still kind of ties down to cost at the end of the day. But when you look at how much money it'll take, knowing that you already have these things in-house. So it's like Image and Time and Neukleos. There's, one HR department, or there's one, I guess, people and operations department. But if there was a case where we needed two of those, it'd be wild because like these guys are already here. Why are we doing this? But for some businesses, it's important to have both to make sure that both companies are running optimally. So yeah, Mark Ritson says the trick is to basically draw the line between back of house savings and front of house independence in the perfect place. So you're basically trying to make sure that even though you want every single brand to have their own independence, have their own stuff, you also need to be it has to be financially viable. You need to also make sure that, you're not just throwing money, at each brand in a way that doesn't bring back funds. So bottom line is that not everyone is a juggler. It's BCG, but I think it was ABG. Anyway, so yes, we've learned that Adidas is definitely not a juggler, and the company that did buy Reebok is. So they have a lot of experience in managing house of brands. So there's the guys that do like jewelry. There's a couple of companies, also very like a random range of companies. Sorry, my memory is terrible, so I can't list them all. But those guys are pros, and they're doing Reebok yet because it's too soon. But I'm kind of curious to see what happens there. Sorry, it's just a screenshot from the video. But basically, the bottom line was, if you have too many brands and you don't know how to manage them, it'll kill your focus. And focus is very important. So even though you get less products, less revenue streams, profit is really important. And I think like it's clear if you're not focusing on one thing, like, if you have two things splitting your attention, then chances are you're not getting the best out of either thing. If GB's on this call, reference to our conversation yesterday. But yeah, if your attention is split, then you're not getting the best out of either thing. But if you focus on one thing, chances are you'll be getting more profit, even though it's not more revenue. You're spending less money, and then you're maximizing the amount of money you can make on that one product, and yay, profit. And yeah, that's the lesson from this video. Is this where I give you guys your homework, or is this where I do Q&A?
So do Q&A, and then you'd tell them the homework.
All right, hello peeps, any cues or points? Hi, Ayotunde.
Hi, Tony. Hi. So with this lesson, it's so funny enough. I watched this last year, right? So this whole series, I think it was in December, right? So I stumbled on it and I watched the whole thing, and so it was refreshing to watch it again this year. But I mean, every time I think about this particular, this is number 9, right? Number 9 lesson. I struggle a bit, right? But while I understand what he means in terms of being laser focused, right? But then you also understand that maybe in some markets it's not like that, or in some organizations it might not be like that. So if I think of maybe Google, and I might not be right here because I've also not done proper research on that, right? Google has a variety of products or offerings, right? I know they're still under they're now under Alpha Beta. What's that name? Right? Alphabet or something. I can't remember. Right. So I find it very funny, right? And someone mentioned Techno here, and I know Techno has Infinix, and it's almost like they are getting, they have different brands that target different markets. Techno already is a Chinese brand, so people have put it in the pockets. They have Infinix that sort of speaks to a higher socioeconomic class. They have ITEL that is somewhere also in the play in the mix, right? So I mean, there's a bit of a struggle really for me sometimes when I and maybe it's contextual per organization or from brand to brand or for a conglomerate of brands, right? Sorry, I know I've rambled a bit, but I'm sure you're not cutting some of the things I've been seeing in there.
Okay. I mean, I don't know that I don't know if there's an answer. Like, is there an answer to what you said? Bukola, over to you.
Thanks, Tony. Thanks, Ayatine, for the question. I think in the video, he does quite stress the fact that not everybody is good at juggling. And so in this particular instance, it was an Adidas issue. I don't think as a general statement, because it gave kudos to the Unilevers, the P&Gs, I think even the LVMHs and all those people who do run a house of brands and have managed to still be successful doing that. And if from the video, what became quite clear to me was the groundbreaking nature of how Reebok, the momentum Reebok had at the time Adidas bought them. And fast forward now, of course, apart from the really kind of people who are into sneakers or things like that, they might not be as familiar with the brand or may not even have a product, right? So it's how Adidas has managed the brand, but more importantly, because Adidas was also trying to build their own brand, I suppose. There's also a period where Adidas too was, I think they also got a bit mixed up about their own brand before they got a lot more clarity with the 3 lines and et cetera, et cetera. So I think it was just quite specific to Adidas as a company, not as a general rule of thumb. It would be my assessment of the situation. Yes, Tony, over to you.
All right. Any other questions, thoughts, stuff? Mm-hmm. All right. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. No one. Okay. Cool. But yeah, all in all, I thought this was really interesting. Like Bukola just mentioned, he did list, I think 4 companies actually that are doing really well, and it was Unilever, P&G, Diageo, and LVMH. Which brings us to our homework. What house of brands is doing, well, I guess that's number 2, well, in Nigeria. So looking at Nigerian companies specifically. So the first question is, which one needs to stop and just move to a branded house? I can think of one massive one that I will send a strong email to stop. And then the second question is, which one is actually doing well? And your why. I guess it could help to look at why LVMH and P&G and the rest of them are doing well. But yes, that's the homework. Please drop your answers in Basecamp. Yeah, that's it for me.
Thanks, Tony. Please drop the question as well in Basecamp so that people kind of have something to reference. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Davey C, over to you. Good morning.
Good morning. Okay, hope everyone can hear me okay. So I'm going to be talking about Not Your Mother's Tiffany. Just a quick background, at least from the video. Tiffany & Co. is an American jeweler. They've been around for maybe about 2 centuries now. So very well renowned, very prominent in the space, especially especially within, like, I'll kind of say higher middle class America. So in the video, he quickly talks about how Ritten quickly talks about how Tiffany and Co was in the process of being, acquired by LVMH. LVMH being the biggest conglomerate in luxury goods. And I'm guessing it was something that they've been trying to do for a while. And obviously, from that acquisition, what they were now able to try and do to revitalize the brand and gain some spark to people being interested in the brand again. The brand was doing well; it wasn't struggling so much, but that definitely got into a place where it was, especially within the luxury space, it wasn't as talked about as it used to be. So I thought it was interesting in just even the phrasing of Not Your Mother's, Not Your Mother's Tiffany, because I think a lot of brands have kind of fallen to that, especially brands that have been established and successful and are heritage brands. And it just speaks to, being open to change and what you're supposed to update or change in order to speak to today's audience. So I know Maggie comes up quite a bit, about being, your mother's Maggie, and whether that's, is relevant for the audience of today or the young men and women of today. And that's why, even though they're not saying directly Not Your Mother's Maggie, they're doing a lot of things to kind of communicate a similar thing in terms of, showing a different type of customer, including men a lot more in their communication, including young couples and so on and so forth. Union Bank is again in a similar position as well, where not your grandfather's bank in Union Bank's case, because for what people know it for is being that bank of big, strong, reliable, and they're not thinking about simple, smarter, and all the things that that Union Bank is currently doing. And so again, it's just that change in perception and trying to revitalize a brand that is known for probably a generation or two before. So one of the first things I wanted us to quickly talk about was, what are some of the advantages to even being an established or a legacy brand? Quick one-word answers or phrases. The first one I thought of was familiar. It is familiar, you know it, you're comfortable with it, you can recognize it from a mile away. Are there any other ones anybody can think of right now? Okay. I'll throw it in the chats. Fondness, trust, okay. Recognition, okay. Yeah, I think that's valid, especially for nostalgic, exactly. So sometimes you don't even know why you're going to it. Dependability, okay. I think those are good positives. Okay, what are the disadvantages of having an established brand or a legacy brand? Dusty, that's a great word. Old school, agreed. Cliche, yes. We've seen you do it a million times. Any other one? I think a big one for me is out of touch. It just seems to not speak to an audience of today sometimes. So yeah, okay. So I think we kind of understand that concept a bit more now, because to an extent, especially if you've established a brand, even if it's not as old as some of the brands we've spoken about already, becomes a point, especially when there is a new generation of people being introduced to your brand, that you might need to kind of update or revitalize your image for that audience. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to speak to is something that wasn't touched on as much in this in the video, but I thought it was very interesting, especially when we consider the luxury brand space. having, you know, worked with a few brands in that space, it's a very interesting space to try and tap into. I think even in our conversations around Shivers recently and why, you know, why they're even trying to go for a new audience, but still keep that, you know, that elevated position and what that even means today, because I think luxury, the definition of luxury has shifted quite a bit. So I put old luxury here. So words like classic, exclusive, understated, haute couture, high fashion. I'm sure you can think of a few more words that are related to kind of what you think of an established luxury brand or what that means, especially people within, you know, fashion and whatnot. And you can see kind of the images, the shift in the images as well. So while we're looking at, you know, like a classic Ralph Lauren ad with the white guys in their polos and jeans and whatnot. So I kind of put new luxury in with some of these words, and I'm sure again you guys can think of some more things. So it's about looking at daring, looking at diverse, looking at cool, sometimes even looking at ostentatiously cool, looking at street influenced. And I think the interesting thing about this is that what I'm trying to say is that it's not necessarily moving from just classic to daring or moving from exclusive to diverse. It is more an addition. So you still have to, especially as a luxury brand, you still have to kind of speak to the classic and exclusive. But these days, you also have to include some of these other new elements, and that's kind of how luxury is being defined in a new way. So going to the ad that was talked about, the campaign with Beyonce and Jay-Z for Tiffany and Co. I think what the previous slide kind of leads directly into what I'm saying, and that is kind of that bridge between what is old and new and what is trusted and what is, you know, is risky maybe. And I think Tiffany kind of did a great job of explaining that brilliantly. So if you guys were, I was going to play the ad, but you guys can check it out on your own. In the ad is Beyonce and Jay-Z, and Beyonce is singing, I think it's called Moon River. And the Moon River song is from the classic movie, a 60s movie called Breakfast at Tiffany's. And there are lots of visual references, and that's what I'm showing here. A lot of visual references to that same ad, but in an updated way, and obviously using somebody that would not even have been considered, you know, at that time. So it's just showing that they're also building on pop culture moments and trying to create new pop culture moments from that as well. Because Breakfast at Tiffany, it wasn't a sponsored movie by Tiffany's and Co. What became so synonymous with the brand and the perception of it that, you know, became a pop culture moment that, you know, the brand can hold on to forever. So you can just see kind of the juxtaposition between like what they did before and now. And it's the same, but it's definitely refreshed. So the key takeaways from me, and I think the takeaways were the same in the video as well, was changing to stay the same. And it was talking about being consistent means, you know, updating and adapting kind of your brand's mission, vision, you know, belief, to remain true even in today's climate. So for instance, I've mentioned words like daring before. Daring in the 90s could have just meant, you know, for some brands, maybe it would have just been somebody's on a skateboard or somebody is, you know, doing something somewhere else. Daring today can mean something as simple as woman breastfeeding in public, which somehow that is called daring, but maybe it shouldn't be, you know. And that just shows that how time changes, the meaning of things. So if you've built your brand mission or belief around something, it should not be time bound. It shouldn't be just focused on the time of then. You know, look at the future, look at what it could possibly grow into, and build some truths that, you know, are timeless. Then the next thing is taking risks. And to an extent, for me, it's always, everything is a calculated risk, especially when you're in that brand space. I think I'm never really the one to advocate for full change in anything, because I believe, especially if your brand has been somewhat successful, there are still some things that you should be holding on to. But risk comes with the territory, especially when we've talked about this generational divide in how products are consumed today. So Tiffany's experienced that because, you know, when they were pushing those posters of not your mother's Tiffany, and using younger women who went as dressed up, not using the same turquoise colors that they've been putting on everything. There was some pushback from their original audience. I'm sure the older women maybe that have been buying from Tiffany for some time and just look at it as that kind of standard in jewelry. But I'm sure over time there will be the opportunity to now recruit some new people, but, you know, maintain some things maintain some audience that they already kind of had built over time, especially if you bridge that gap like I talked about. So an ad like the Beyonce ad, referencing something that people are already nostalgic to and can already, you know, feel is synonymous with what they feel is the brand's highest standard. Those, you know, it will still give the brand a chance to maintain and recruit at the same time. And that's kind of it for me. I'm just going to open it up to questions or feedback from anybody before I give the assignments. Will I be able to see hands?
There are no hands up.
Okay.
I have my
Sorry,
hand
Sophia.
up.
Okay, cool.
Hi. Great presentations today. Thank you very much, David C. And everyone that has presented so far. My question is, when we say, when we talk about taking risks, right? And you mentioned something about being prepared for pushback from maybe the original audience in quotes. What does that really, what could that really look like, and how could a brand deal with that? Like, you know, how could you please your in quotes original audience and then the new ones that you're trying to appeal to?
Okay. So I'm sure we can think of a bunch of examples of that, but I think again it's about what is true for your brand and what that overall, you know, objective is. If it has stayed consistently that to some extent it should translate to a new audience, even if it looks like a new thing entirely. So dealing with pushback, first of all, it will come because the need for a new audience sometimes is also just even a clear business decision. At some point, maybe the audience you had before is dying because they're too old, or they have graduated past your product, or they're just not even spending as much anymore because, you know, they already have it. So why do they keep going for it? So sometimes it's even just a clear business decision to make. So you have to really be prepared to really take that on. I think it's in carrying the audience along, regardless of what happens. It's about carrying the audience along, and that's why you craft, you know, specific campaigns that are able to showcase something new about the brand, but also show what the brand truth is and what the brand truth has been all this time. You might lose people regardless. I think that can happen, but I think the risk is in being able to show that you're still the same brand, but in a new space, maybe, and in crafting that communication in a way that people do not feel like you have abandoned what you were before. I don't know if anybody else has any thoughts on that question.
Debs, thanks. We need to move to the next one. Just please set the assignment. Thank you.
All right, cool. So the assignment is a pretty simple one. Just pick a brand. I've chosen 30 years, a 30-year-old brand at least as the minimum, but I don't know. I'm sure you can find much, much older. So mention one thing that you keep and then one thing that you change. It could be something as simple as the brand colors, the logo, the audience, or even just maybe their tagline. So I'll put that on Basecamp so you guys can respond to that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Debs. David Ondogan, over to you, sir.
Hi, good morning, guys. I don't know why I'm after Debs. This is just set up. Over, please can you help me share the screen?
David, you can start speaking whilst it's sharing.
Okay, cool. So the video is for the point 7. It started with consumer centric, which speaks especially on Amazon, which is Jeff Bezos, right? And he was now touching base how Jeff Bezos was really focused on its customers, and how he also want to push that idea of you being focused on just your customers before you go into strategy or even research, and focus more on innovation, right? And so the major point that I took out of the video was basically that the purpose of a business is basically to identify, serve, and delight your customers, right? And most companies forget to understand the fact that before anything else, your customer comes in play first. And looking at even most brands in Nigeria here locally, you can realize that most of them do not even care so much about the customers. They are basically driven by sales. And that's why this point was really standing out, that you need to identify your customers, you need to serve them, and you need to make sure you are making them happy. So one other thing was like the dirty secrets of most companies is that they run by product based, right? Engineers and cost cutting accountants. So this is basic. I can even relate to that in terms of some of the brands that we even manage, that they are always wanting to be cost effective. They always want to cost down costs. I was just sharing cost for influencers and all that, and they keep cutting down the cost. And when we do reports, you keep telling us that we are not benchmarking against the competitors. Meanwhile, when we do this report, you always make sure we highlight that these competitors are using A-list influencers, and those A-list influencers comes with so much cost. But when you want to do any campaign, or you want to do anything, or even reach your customers, you basically want to cut down your costs. You want to cut down the kind of people that would kind of relate to your customers. Those are basic things that even also affect the customer relationship with your brand. And this also is a very major part of the video session. And I was also looking at some of the Nigerian brands, right, which I mentioned earlier, that they are always so sales driven. Being customer centric just simply means understanding your customer and knowing what they want. And I think a lot of brands they try to do that, but they always fumbled when it comes to the sales. For business, it's always more the obsession of customer was just so passive for him, and he always wants to listen. So they gave the example of of him trying to reach his customers, just simply sending a mail like, okay, aside from us selling books or music, selling books and all that, what else do you think we can offer you? And the customers replied him and they gave him different suggestions and realized that they could actually just go into everything and sell everything. And that was where the idea comes to his head that, okay, we can actually host everything and sell. And looking at that, please go to the next slide. We can see that one major brands that that do this a lot is always Twitter, right? They, even before they execute anything, they always make a tweet trying to get feedback from the customers, trying to get feedback from the users, right? When they want to start this edit button, they've initially made a tweet that do we want them to make an edit button and all that? And a lot of people said yes, which I don't think there should be an edit button anyway. But so it was a very clever thing for them. Like even when they wanted to take away the fleece, there was a tweet that states that they might be taking away the tweet, that there was a poll as well for that. So I feel like this is one brand that stand out, especially when it comes to being customer focused. And locally, yeah, the only brand I can say when it comes to banks, I think Zenith does that and does that a lot too, and they kind of stand out to me because when my pops use Zenith Bank and usually visit Zenith Bank for him oftentimes when I was back home, right? And I know then they tried as much as possible to always be their best, and that's one brand I know that also stands out. Looking at Twitter is just the best example for this. Next slide, please. I feel like this video was just straight to the point, and that's why I'm just trying to touch on the few points that I made. Research also always allows us to understand the consumers, and this, because of this focus on customer, and this will now kind of positively affect you as a brand or as a company in terms of innovating, in terms of building more strategy, and also affecting you positively and being successful. But if you look at some of our big brands, they often say something like, this thing is not going to work. It's not like it's going to stop people from buying my product. Yeah, instantly it might not stop people from buying your product, but in the long run, it might actually stop them from even relating with your brand or even associating themselves with your brand. Yes, so these are the teachable moments in the video. Was basically, as I mentioned before, market orientation. It's also that now translates to research, and when you do your research, now translates to your being innovative as a brand, and comes success as well at the end. That's it from me. Any questions? Any questions or suggestions? Click on, you are muted. Okay,
yeah, it was just the yes edit thing. So the customer being customer centric. But there was a part about Jeff Bezos, right? Something makes him very unique, right? And that's just his just staying true to that. This is what the customer wants, right? I just felt like, regardless of how branded you want to be, strategy you want to do, right? I just like his what's the word? His focus on customers, and that's always the key and the success to any brands. Always focusing on the customer. I guess that's just my 2%. I don't know if this is the part, right?
Yeah, this is the part.
Yeah.
That's why this part was really just straightforward. It's all about listening to your customers. It's all about focusing on them. It's all about making sure that you accept feedback, and also when you accept the feedback, you go into research and get the proper insight, and also accept feedback as well, because some clients, some brands, once even if they get feedback, they just feel like, well, it's not going to affect us in any way. It's not going to draw down our sales. So why focus on it? So that's many mistakes that many brands make. Bukola.
Thank you, David. So I wanted to use this point. I think this point, just obviously, Jeff Bezos has been on this path for a while now. I wanted to explain this in the context of the teams and the work that we do, the roles. Now, for clarity, the role, and I'm going to use the business manager role as an example, because ultimately this is the job of the business manager. And I say that, so you can replace business manager with planner, with strategists. The role of the business manager is that the business manager is meant to be the voice of the customer, right? That means that from a data perspective, you need to know the audience in and out, and to the client, you are that voice. To your studio, you remain that voice, right? That is the essence of it. When you come on into a client on a new brand or something, you probably wouldn't be able to know more than the client knows about their business when you kind of join to work on their business. But in time, obviously, that should change quite significantly. But the points that the main thing that you must always know or be more attuned to over and above everyone else is the customer, the person, the psychographics, the motivations, the behavior, the insights that would trigger those, the things that the brands need to do. So you are that is your role. You are that empty seat, so to speak, metaphorically speaking. So I wanted to just kind of mention that. I've been told there's a new data thing. I can't remember which of the groups, advertising groups here doing that. So previously for data in Nigeria, or not data, panel, so Dentsu, that's Carrot and the likes, had something called CCS, which I think is customer something survey, which kind of shifted. A lot of the brands started buying that data, but it's an after the fact data. So for you to know what happened, 3 months ago, right? Now there's another agency group who has brought in a new one, which is kind of like a customer panel. So they have, I don't know, hundreds, maybe thousands of the audience there. So before a brand actually sends anything out, they send it to that panel, so they get more real-time information. So again, brands have shifted their money to that. So I just wanted to kind of use that example just from a customer centricity point of view, that even in this market, the brands still want to be led in terms of, whilst I think it's weird because I don't fully agree with the fact that people readily know what they need per time. I think it's more, I don't know, I don't fully agree with it totally, but I'm just saying that at least brands have shifted their cash that way to the new, more real-time panel. So I was just using that as an example. All right, back to you, David, for your assignment.
Yeah, thanks, Nicola. Very valid point. Yeah, the assignment is Obira. Yes, so the assignment is simply give 2 examples of local brands that fit in this mindset, that fit into that always customer focus. They're always having the customers in their mind, even when they are trying to innovate or trying to even build up a campaign or execute any ad. Yeah, so, and why? No, we should have some of them. Yeah, that's it from me. Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much, David. I've seen Gary in the column. This is so funny. Who said you should rebrand Gary? Anyway, so thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Sheung. Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Debs. Thank you, David. Thanks everybody who has been on the call. I hope the video that we learn a lot from the video. And please ensure that the speakers, please put your questions on Basecamp, and please each person respond with their comments or your answers before next week's session. Next week's session will still hold at 9, despite the Monday being a public holiday. Anyway, so fantastic. Thank you guys so much. See you next week. The Vimeo matrix. Anyway, bye guys.